In today's video, we have some trade rumors to take a look at, including talk around the Coyotes, the Penguins, and the Montreal Canadiens. We also have some other news to get caught up on as well, including some big signings, including a big signing in Buffalo, and some other prospects, and some other news from around the league. We'll discuss all of this news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and some trade talk to get caught up on here today. Most of you probably noticed there was no video on the channel yesterday. I've been out of town, traveling, actually coaching, and my daughter had a tournament to be away here. So a little bit behind on the news a bit, but let's try to get caught up. We had a situation in Montreal where forward Jonathan Jerard missed a meeting, I guess, and Marty St. Louis made him miss a practice and a game. Apparently he is going to be resuming play this evening, but Jerard unfortunately had to sit some time out and I guess suffer a little bit of a consequence for the missed meeting. It's certainly not something that's going to go over well. Obviously, Jerard's time in Montreal likely coming to a close here as the season ends. There was no real serious interest at the trade deadline. It's really hard to say what his future holds. I would imagine he might be able to get a contract next year, but unfortunately his value has really faded here in the last number of years. Some signings that were very important. Buffalo Sabres were able to sign future number one goaltender. At least that's the right now the projection for Devin Levi. Levi was arguably one of the best college goaltenders, and in recent memory here, he had a phenomenal run during his time in U.S. college hockey, and the Sabres were certainly I think a little bit concerned that he may not want to sign because he was such a highly touted prospect. He came over to the Sabres from the Florida Panthers, and the Sam Reinhart trade was a major piece there and has continued to have, like I said, a phenomenal run. He gets a 3-year entry-level contract. He was a 7th-round pick in 2020, and it's rare that you ever see late-round picks get the max rookie salary with the bonuses and everything, and he was able to secure that kind of contract with Buffalo. That's an absolutely huge signing, though, for the Sabres. Obviously, they have UPL is still, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen still in the system. They have, Craig Anderson and Eric Comrie kicking around as well. So, be interesting to see what kind of opportunity they give Levi. I mean, it was well known during the negotiations that he wanted to have an easy path to the NHL to get an opportunity. And it sounds like he's going to stay at the NHL level for the remainder of this year and likely will get some games. At least it looks that way right now. So, be curious to see how everything plays out. But it is a major piece for the future, under contract now for Buffalo. The Dallas Stars have found themselves a prospect that might be a diamond in the rough type of deal. Certainly a bit of a late bloomer, an undrafted prospect by the name of Chase Wheatcraft. He's a player from the Western Hockey League who put up 38 points in 55 games this year. Certainly a player that's had a real solid season. Like I said, undrafted, and could be a real nice find there for the Dallas Stars. We also saw a signing in Edmonton where they've signed prospect Jake Chason, 19 years old, for the 2021 draft. He was a 4th-round pick. Split time in the Western Hockey League between the Brandon Wheat Kings and the Saskatoon Blade. A few updates from the Maple Leafs. Forward Noel Acciari, unfortunately, looks like he might be out for some time after suffering a head injury. Certainly unpredictable with those, and hard to say how long. I know a lot of the other deadline pieces that the Leafs picked up, like O'Reilly. I know a lot of the other pieces that the Leafs picked up later in the season, like Ryan O'Reilly, that unfortunately haven't dealt with injuries. But good news is that hopefully everything will be okay and he'll be able to return before the end of the regular season, still be available for the playoffs, which was obviously the main objective in the acquisition. Unfortunately for the Leafs, Ilya Samsonov is going to miss some time. Tonight, actually, Matt Murray is supposed to be taking the net to play against the Ottawa Senators, his former team, which is something that was supposed to have happened on a couple of occasions this year, but has yet to actually be realized. But Samsonov was dealing with some sort of injury, didn't make the trip to Ottawa, and is going to be able to recall Bobby McMahon as well as Joseph Wall. So certainly some reinforcements there for the Leafs to deal with these injuries that have been going on. So certainly not good news on the goaltending front. Samsonov has been their best goalie, so they certainly don't want to have a situation where he's out for any length of time. We'll see how Murray can do against the Sens and how he might be able to have to hold on the fort here for a little bit while Samsonov recovers. Penguins forward Nick Bonino, who of course is on his multiple stints here with the Penguins, was reacquired at the deadline, is now also injured and is going to be placed on long-term injury reserve. The only real benefit to teams using the LTIR program at this time of the year is so that they have available cap space to make a recall to be able to replace them on the NHL roster. Some teams are just too tight. that they can't bring up a player from the minors without having room by going through the LTIR method. So that's the case here with Bonino and the Pittsburgh Penguins. On to the trade rumor section of the video. There's a lot of speculation that we might see the Arizona Coyotes continue to shed salary, continue to be busy, and a lot of this is likely going to be ahead of the NHL draft as they continue to restock the cupboards and continue to try to want to load up on as many first and second round picks in this deep draft here for 2023 as they can get their hands on. So a few more names that are in the rumor mill that very well could be traded. Doesn't mean they all will be, but there has been some degree of interest and some degree of already speculation talks around some of these guys. But there was some talk around center Nick Schmaltz, who could be possibly on the move. Now he comes with a little bit more term and money on his contract, so we'll have to see about Schmaltz. I think he's a little less likely to go, but certainly a player who did generate a bit of buzz. Goalie Karel Vejmelka, he's certainly another goaltender on the market that likely is going to get moved. I think they can get a pretty good return for him. There's enough teams looking for goaltending help out there that I really think that there's a good chance they can get an offer that's too good a return for them to pass up. And Lawson Krause, too, is another player that I fully suspect we're going to see the Coyotes move. I mean, these guys are some of their better players, but as we can tell from the Arizona Coyotes and how they've been operating, they're certainly interested in keeping their actual commitment to actual physical cash salary as low as possible. They have a lot of dead money and LTIR contracts, and I'm not really sure in the next few years that they're overly interested in really being overly competitive. I think they're going to be looking to land as many high picks as they can as they go through this process with the Tempe arena situation, trying to get this new arena in place. I think that it's going to be a while here before they really start trying to be a better, more competitive hockey team. Now, there's also some talk, too, around the Montreal Canadiens. Another situation from Montreal hockey now. Author Marco D'Amico discussing in a recent article the future of Joel Edmondson. Of course, the defenseman of Montreal is a player who generated a fair bit of buzz leading to the deadline. There was a lot of interest. His latest report indicates that there was 3 legit offers for Edmondson. The 3 teams that were, well, at least interested parties. I don't know if we got to the point really about an offer, but at least kicking tires, having conversations, that type of thing around Edmondson and his availability. Unfortunately, he did miss a lot of time this year due to injury, and I think some teams were a little reluctant to pull the trigger on a deal because they wanted to see him play, make sure he was healthy, and that it really wasn't much of an option until we got at or beyond the NHL trade deadline. So it's fully expected that these teams will likely re-engage with the Montreal Canadiens and Ken Hughes ahead of the deadline. Obviously, there were some first-round picks that were rumored to be in play. I don't know if that was actually the case, but if the Montreal Canadiens can land, whether it be a high prospect that's already drafted, like a good-looking, projected prospect, or a second-round pick, first-round pick, anything of that nature or anything close to it, then I think Edmondson will be a player that they move. We've already talked about a lot of the speculation around Josh Anderson. Multiple reports lately, too, including, again, from Elliot Friedman, suggesting that Pierre-Luc Dubois is very much likely not signing any more than a one-year deal at most with Winnipeg and working his way to unrestricted free agency, and that he is going to be trying to push himself to get to where he wants, which is the Montreal Canadiens. I don't think that the Jets and Kevin Cheveldayoff will want to push this much further down the road. We'll see how this season goes. Certainly with players like Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler getting closer to free agency as well, they really need to make some hard decisions in Winnipeg this offseason. It's going to be a time, I think, where they have a lot to do. They have some tough choices. They're going to decide the future of this team, and we could see potential several moves. And obviously how this regular season finishes and whatever success they have, if any, in the playoffs will also play a role in all of this too. But it wouldn't be shocking if we see the Jets hook up and finally send Pierre-Luc Dubois to the Montreal Canadiens. But the question is he wants to go there. Everybody seems to think he's going to be dealt, but will the Habs be content to do that, or will they be ready and able and willing just to wait a year and try to get him as an unrestricted free agent and not have to give up any assets to make the acquisition? To me, that makes a lot of sense, and it would not be the least little bit shocking if that's the path that they end up taking. Now, also in the Pittsburgh Penguins, I see reports from Pittsburgh media today as well talking about the future of goaltender Tristan Jarry in Pittsburgh. Now, he's certainly a player that's not had a great season, been inconsistent, but at the same time throughout his career, he certainly has had his moments when he appears to be, a solid, real good number one goaltender. But the problem is he's yet to really see any playoff success, and his regular season performance lately hasn't been good. Casey DeSmith has arguably been a better goaltender this year, and I don't know, I'm really surprised, to be honest, that the Penguins did not address this further at the trade deadline, because here's the other issue, is that Tristan Jarry is a pending UFA. So if they're not really in a situation where they're overly happy with Jerry, or if Jerry's happy with the team, he could walk as a free agent this summer. So as much as they may be prepared to move on and go with a new goalie for next year, that's going to create a situation where this is an asset that's been in their system for a long time. Even though he hasn't gotten over that hump to hit the next level, has been a good player, would have some value, and they won't be able to trade him. I mean, they could trade his rights, which is only for signing purposes, which is not going to get you more than a late round pick usually. But it's just an unfortunate situation where I really thought they would have seen a scenario where they might be able to trade him or bring in another goalie. Either way, regardless of what happens here, it's quite possible that if the regular season and playoffs don't produce the results that the Pens are really looking for Jerry to break through and take that next step in his career, that he does move on in the offseason and that they enter the trade market to find another goalie that would be, something that who they thought they could build up, to continue to push for a cup here. As long as Crosby, Malkin, Letang are there, this team is not going to consider tearing anything down or going for a rebuild or anything of that nature. A name for me that comes to mind as being a potential target for them, and this is just my own opinion here. This is not a rumor from an NHL insider, but I think John Gibson makes a ton of sense in Pittsburgh. I mean, to be honest, it's been rumored for the last year plus that he and the Ducks are willing to talk about a trade and to get him to a spot where he might be happier, ready for a fresh start. And I think he'd love to get on a team that is more likely to have a shot at playoffs and a team that's in win now mode, not somebody who's going to be rebuilding for possibly the remaining of his prime years. John Gibson's at a point in his career where he needs to get some, next steps, or it's going to go fast. The time that you have in the NHL flies by sometimes, I would think, as players, just like the rest of our lives. And if they don't take advantage of it while they're in their prime to get over the hump and get that championship, or at least to try to get there, time runs out on them fast. So I can see, a potential connection there between Gibson and the Penguins as a potential, landing spot for him. So let me know your thoughts on that and all the other news today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe, stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. We'll be back with our regular videos from my home studio starting tomorrow. Thank you for watching again, and I'll catch you next time.